Thank you for joining me again, team. In this screencast, we're going to finish Chapter 12 and cover Sections 12.5 and 12.6. In Section 12.5, we're going to talk about how we can improve food security. We can use government or governmental policies to improve food production and food security. First, we can control food prices to make sure that food stays affordable for most members of society. Secondly, government can provide subsidies to farmers. Subsidies are amounts of money provided to some area of the economy to increase production. In this case, farmers are getting money to make more food and increase the food supply. The diagram on the left side compares subsidies to financial steroids used to beef up some industry. We can also improve food security by growing and buying more food locally and cutting down on food waste. We can support community-supported agriculture, or CSA. In community-supported agriculture, members of the community pledge their support to local farms and farmers. Farmers markets and food stalls increase access to food where supermarkets can't. They also reduce fossil fuel energy costs related to the transporting of food over long distances. CSA also supports local economies because consumers can buy shares of a local farmer's crops. In cities or other areas where arable or farmable land is scarce, we can use vertical farms. Vertical farms take advantage of vertical space versus needing large amounts of horizontal space to grow food. An operating vertical farm is shown here on the left, and a design for a vertical farm for growing power in Milwaukee, Wisconsin is shown on the right. We also need to reduce food waste. By some estimates, about 40% of food in the United States is never eaten and wasted, while 1 in 6 Americans experiences food insecurity. This infographic provides some information about food waste in the United States. Food waste not only impairs food security, it also creates a lot of waste, and when it rots, it produces methane, a greenhouse gas. In Section 12.6, we're going to talk about how we can produce food more sustainably. Many farmers are trying to be more sustainable by reducing soil erosion on their farms. There are several techniques that farmers use to reduce soil erosion. I'll show you some examples on this slide and the next few ones. People are also trying to identify erosion hotspots where they think they can protect and restore soil. The photograph on this slide shows terracing, where different levels or shelves are built into the side of a hill to hold on to soil and water. This photograph shows contour planting, where crops are grown along the contours of a hill, and the areas in between the crops can catch and hold on to soil. This is strip cropping with cover crop, where crops are grown in long strips with cover crop in between them. The cover crop is not harvested and can protect and restore soil. This is a photograph of alley cropping, where crops are grown in long alleys with trees on each side to protect the soil from erosion. This is agroforestry, where crops are grown within a forest and amongst trees. This photograph shows windbreaks or shelter belts, where crops are protected from wind erosion. And finally, this photograph shows conservation tillage, where the farm is not completely cleared and the remaining vegetation can stay there to protect and form new soil. These photographs show more examples of the soil conservation techniques we just talked about. See if you can identify which soil conservation technique was used in each one. Next, we can try and restore soil fertility. There are a number of ways in which we can do this. First, we can use organic fertilizers. Organic fertilizers include animal manure, plant manure, which is just processed plant material, and compost. Next, we can use manufactured inorganic fertilizers. The main components of these fertilizers are nitrogen, phosphorus, and calcium. These are all nutrients plants need to grow. Finally, we can use crop rotation, where we grow different crops during different seasons or different years. We can plant crops that will restore nutrients back to the soil. This illustration shows what crop rotation might look like over a 4-year period, rotating between crops in the cabbage family, bean family, potato family, and root and onion family. Another way in which we can grow food more sustainably is to reduce or repair soil salinization and desertification. Unfortunately, fixing and repairing soil salinization is expensive. Desertification can be slowed down and prevented by reducing overgrazing, deforestation, and other destructive land practices. This infographic shows that soil salinization can be prevented by changing your farming practices and can be cleaned up by flushing the soil out, by stopping your farming for 2 to 5 years, or by installing an underground drainage system. There have also been efforts to make aquaculture more sustainable. Some producers have moved their operations to the open ocean. This is called open ocean aquaculture, and it reduces coastal pollution and coastal habitat destruction. Secondly, some producers have chosen to raise herbivorous fish that don't depend on wild fish for food. And finally, there are producers that have chosen to use recirculating aquaculture. Water is collected and filtered and then recirculated so that no pollution makes its way into the environment. This infographic summarizes sustainable aquaculture practices. As we move towards greater sustainability, we need to take a close look at meat and dairy product production and consumption. We need to shift towards more grain-efficient forms of protein, such as white meat and fish. Some people are even calling upon us to eat things like insects, which is why I included the photograph on the left. We should eat beef from rangelands and pastures, not feedlots that produce a lot of waste pollution and require a lot of fossil fuels for transportation. We should develop meat substitutes and support companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods. And finally, we should just eat less meat. This graph shows the number of kilograms of grain needed to produce 1 kilogram of each type of protein. It shows that chicken and fish are much more efficient to raise than cows or pigs for meat. Shifting towards more sustainable food production is going to require sustainable agricultural techniques that use fewer inputs, produce less pollution, and contribute less to global warming. Organic farming is one solution. It provides many benefits, but it does require more labor and produces less food. A second solution is hydroponics, where plants are grown without soil, shown here on the right. And this infographic summarizes the benefits of organic farming. And finally, this infographic shows what you can do to increase sustainability in food production. You can do things like eating less meat, composting, and wasting less food.